So this is episode 5 with Real Talk with Claudia Mostaghasi, and I have Mr. Ryan Bram, with me, and he is a CPR instructor. So as you know, and I don't know if you know Ryan, but I was nominated to be a Woman of Impact for 2023 with the Heart Association. So we're really focusing all the month of February on heart health. Mm-hmm. And I think CPR is like one of the things that is very important that we all know. I know of some people that it's like it was literally one of those life or death situations if no one around it knew how to do CPR.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about you. Like, so how do you become a CPR instructor?
So I've been working in the field of emergency medical services for like 7 years. I've been working with the fire department here locally for 4 years now. So obviously we get all our training through that. So you meet a lot of people. And one of the people that I got training through was an instructor, and I became certified as an instructor through him. And I've been teaching for right around that 4-year mark as well as a CPR instructor.
Where do you teach?
So I teach for Coastal Bend CPR, which is out of the National First Responder Training Complex, which is a new building that just went up over off of Saratoga.
Okay.
It's a little bit further past Greenwood.
Okay. Just past
they got CPR and they cover EMT, fire. They're kind of covering the whole basis of first responder training as a whole, and I teach out of there.
So whoever is going to become like an EMT or like firefighters go there too?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
We offer EMT basic classes and the fire academy as well.
So, and anybody can go and just sign up for the class, or do you have to be a specific to?
No, anybody can go and sign up for the class, especially for the EMT basic and fire. You can come straight out of high school, come and take those classes. And we do the CPR training for both healthcare and non-healthcare providers.
Oh, okay, cool. So I can so that's a good idea for my next team outing. I can go and make sure that we all know CPR so that we can save each other's lives. When you get, because here you get like little heart attacks with loans, like, oh my God, the client like quit their job, boom, like I need CPR. Yep. So how busy are you guys? Like, do you see a lot of response? Like, do you have classes like every day or?
Yeah, so like I said, I work for the fire department, so I'm on shift every third day. We work for 24 hours, then we have 48 hours off.
So you're currently a firefighter?
I'm currently a firefighter.
Okay.
I actually work tomorrow.
Where, what station?
I'm at Station 6, which is the one like Weber, Saratoga area, where that Miller's is.
Yeah.
I work at that one.
I've done a lot of loans for firefighters.
Yeah.
Hence Mr. Brown. I know that James Brown, I know he retired. Yes. Captain James Brown. And then I did a loan for Eric Teo.
I know him.
I did the loan for him. Chad Morgan, the pink truck. Yep. Yeah. I did a loan for him too. Oh, I have helped a lot of firefighters out there. If I forgot to mention anybody, I know I had, because I have done a lot of loans for them. Well, that's
There's a lot of us.
We were just talking about how he wanted to refinance, and I'm like, no, don't refinance just yet. Rates are high.
Yeah, I saw that. Right now is not a good time.
Yeah. So how much are the classes?
So it does depend on if you are doing the healthcare versus non-healthcare portion of it. Non-healthcare, we charge $35 for it. Healthcare is $50 for the CPR.
So it's 1 hour?
Roughly an hour and a half, sometimes pushing 2 hours, depending on questions and all that kind of stuff. But usually we keep it right around an hour and a half.
And do you get like a certificate or something stating?
You do. However, they do it all through email now because everything's about technology. So it is through the email, and it gives you actually like a wall certificate if you want to print it out and put it on your wall. But you get that wallet one as well that you can print out and just keep in your wallet.
Yeah. So how does it work? Like, so let's say you are in a restaurant. And somebody, needs CPR. Like, I mean, are you obligated? I mean, how does that? Because I know, like, for example, doctors, they say, they have to say, like,
yeah,
hey, I'm a doctor.
Yeah,
So how
and that
does
was
it
always
work
a
when you're
question that people,
certification?
I do get asked that question a lot because people are always worried about that legal aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, what we have is this thing called the Good Samaritan Law. And basically, what that is it just means as long as you're acting as any good, normal person would with good intentions, you're covered, right?
Okay.
If you step in and it doesn't work out for this person, you don't have to worry about any legal liability, right? Just having that training and everything, you're covered under that Good Samaritan Law.
Okay. So as long as you okay. So how I guess how is there any way that you can cause more like that it can go more the worst way than actually like let's say somebody needs CPR and I say, "Oh, let me help," and instead of helping, can I make it worse?
I mean, obviously, there's always ways to make a situation worse.
Worse,
But
right.
just by doing CPR, you're really not going to do anything too bad. Because something I always like to teach in my class too, because of course they always talk about, checking for pulse and breathing and all that stuff. I always like to add, because stress of the situation can make it hard to tell sometimes, right?
Right.
So I always like to add, unless you're 100% sure that they don't need CPR, we should just be doing it anyways. Because they've done studies of basically what will happen to this guy if we do chest compressions on him when they didn't actually need them. And what they found is that they'll be fine. The worst you'll cause is they'll wake up with a sore chest, right, from pushing on it that hard. But if they were living before and you did the chest compressions, you're not going to change that, right?
But if you didn't do it and they actually didn't need it,
yeah, then we are making the situation worse, right? So unless we're 100% sure, I always like to teach that, just do it. Right. Okay. Better to err on the side of caution.
Right.
Because what do we do before that? We call for help. So we'll do that until they get there. And then once the fire department gets there, we'll be able to make a further determination.
So you're just really holding the situation just while the actual experts come in.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do you know if somebody needs CPR?
So the easiest thing, like obviously if you're just walking around and someone collapses, right, that's one indicator. But when we actually go up to this person, very simply, you can just go down. You want to put your ear close to their mouth and you're going to look at their chest and try and listen for any breathing. And if you don't hear or see anything, chances are they need CPR.
Okay.
Right? So that's when we would want to do it. And like I said, it can be hard to tell because there's some situations where maybe they're just not breathing very good. So it's just hard to tell. So again, that's when it goes back to, unless you're 100% sure they don't need it, just do it.
Then just do it anyway. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so, okay. I'm just curious. So what has been the most like, have you had any experiences where you're like, oh my God, I'm like so glad that I did that, or like you personally, that you were like in the spot and you're like, oh, okay, I literally helped them.
Yeah, we definitely have some like that. And a lot of it is with like heart attacks and stuff like that, where we prevent it from even getting to this point. Those are the ones where I'm always really like, we stepped in and we did a good thing. Right?
Okay.
When they're calling at 3:00 in the morning because they are having all of a sudden waking up from chest pain, and we're able to quickly get them to the hospital. And the hospital
before they even have them,
before they even get to this point. And then there are some where we've had it get to this point. Sometime last year, we actually had a survivor come by our station just to like drop off some cookies to tell us like thank you for doing that for them. And often we don't get to see that stuff. So when someone does come by and tell us that we did something like that and actually like help them make a difference, that always makes us feel really good, obviously, because normally we don't get a follow-up. So it's really nice when we do get a follow-up like that, especially from the person themselves.
I always like to tell this story because it's just a funny story. My great grandma, rest in peace. Oh my God, that lady, she lived by herself like until the day she died, literally. And she got like probably like a month and a half before, 2 months, she got the switch like where he would just press it and then the fire department will come. And we would laugh because I'm like, Grandma, you can't be calling just the cute firefighters will come. And she's like, but they come really fast. And I'm like, yes, Grandma, but it has to be an emergency. I'm like, this is like literally like scary that she had that thing, like, because she's like, Oh, and then the firefighter, I'm like, yes, you're like having a lot of fun with that thing, and the firefighter showing up right away. Okay, so tell me how basic can you explain to us? So he brought the dummy right here, and he said that this is really what they use. Tell me a little bit about what I was asking about COVID and the mouth to mouth.
Yeah, so this is one from our classroom, so it's one that actually gets used there. So a big push that they've had with CPR probably in like the last 10 years, a big thing with it is just trying to like make it easier for people to do, because obviously the more people trained, the more likely as people are to do it, and overall we get better outcomes, right?
Right.
So one of the things that they did to lean in that direction was they kind of started to move away a little bit from that mouth to mouth. And that did happen before COVID, but since COVID, obviously that's stuck to a little bit more, because whether it's COVID or any other diseases, putting our mouth directly on someone else's is a great way to transmit diseases. Right. So they kind of started to step out from that because they noticed that people weren't wanting to do CPR.
Because you don't want to risk,
right? Because they don't want to take that risk. So they kind of started going away from it and going to the hands-only CPR that they talk a lot about now. Like when you see the kiosks and stuff, that's what they teach.
Yeah.
And that's just to kind of take away that fear, that risk of getting anything, and just focus on the chest compressions. And that wasn't just a, hey, people are scared of it, let's take it away. They put research behind it too.
To make sure that they could
to make
do
sure
it.
This was something that was a good thing. And what they found is that even once someone stops breathing, there's still oxygen left in the blood, right? Okay. And that's what we want to move. We want to move that oxygen.
So you don't necessarily need to put more air in.
Yeah. All our breaths do is just introduce new air, but they still have some in them, and they got more than enough to last until the help gets there. So that's why they have that heavy push on the hands-only CPR, because there's oxygen in there. We just want to keep it moving. Most importantly to the brain.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's why they've gone to the hands-only CPR. And in terms of keeping it simple, if all you can do is just the chest compressions until help gets there, you are absolutely making a better situation for this person.
I see.
And speaking from my experience with the fire department, like I said, we make these calls on a more regular basis than the average person sees.
Right.
And unfortunately, more often than not, people don't do anything before we get there. So that's why we really have a push on trying to make it as easy and simple as possible, because the more people that can do it before we get there, the better chance
of the person to survive. Right? That's very interesting that you say that. So how do you start? So let's say you're going to teach me.
So the first thing, of course, is trying to recognize the need for CPR. The
first thing is I'm going to get certified with this class. I'm just kidding. I'm like, I don't know. Am I going to get something? Because I'm going to pay attention, Ryan. So no, I'm just kidding.
I think we can arrange something. So the first thing is obviously recognizing the need for CPR. And like I said, whether it's someone collapsing or maybe you're walking into a room and you're just finding them laying on bed, just not moving or something like that, run up quickly, see if they're breathing, do that check like I said. And if they're not breathing, we're going to be doing CPR, or like I said, unless you're 100% sure they don't need it.
They don't need it.
Do it anyways. And then we do want to try and get them on a hard, flat surface when we go to push, because if you're on the bed and pushing, both of you are just going to be bouncing up and down. So
and it's not going to do anything.
Right?
Okay.
So mainly that means the floor, right? Okay. Whether it's them collapsing and falling on the floor, or us moving them off the bed onto the floor, something like, we want to try and get them on the floor. So we have that hard, flat surface. So be gentle
too. Don't like just push them out of the bed, because then like you break something else because you're like, hey, let's go. Ryan said to put you on the floor.
And the important thing is not to hurt yourself in that either. Because if you hurt yourself, then maybe you can't do CPR anymore, and that's a worse situation, right? Yeah. So, I mean, if it's that bad of a situation, you have to leave them in bed. You can get away with it, but we do prefer that hard, flat surface, right? That's why we try and get them there. And then it's just trying to make sure our hands are in the right spot. Now, the good, like, general landmark that they give is center of the sternum between the nipple line. Okay. And we want to make sure we're using that heel of our palm. So we want to put the heel of our palm directly over that sternum in between the nipple line. Now, that's a good, like I said, general landmark for most people. But really what we're trying to make sure we're avoiding is this bottom part of the sternum here, known as the xiphoid process. You don't need to remember it's called that. It's that extra little bit at the bottom that's not connected to any of the ribs. And we all have it.
You can feel it.
And you can feel it. And the reason we're avoiding this is because if we do start pushing on it with our chest compressions, we actually run the risk of causing it to break off. And then you have this tiny little bone fragment that's moving around in there that can absolutely start cutting some stuff up while we're moving their chest around, right? And that can make the situation worse. So the easy way to avoid that, and this gets your hand in a good spot for chest compressions on anybody, is you'll just run your finger down their sternum, find the bottom of it, go 2 finger widths from the bottom,
and that's where
right
you're going to
that,
start.
Right? And then this hand is in a perfect spot for chest compressions. And like I said, we want that heel of the palm right there over the sternum in that spot. And then from there, it'll be easier if I stand, sorry.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's making, you got this hand in place, and then you just want to interlace the fingers and lift up. And the only reason we're really doing that is because we're not actually trying to move the entire chest up and down with our compressions.
It's just in the middle.
We really just want to move that sternum up and down. That's what makes our chest compressions effective, moving that. So we're really just kind of lifting up to make sure all we're touching is just the sternum, right? So then from there, you just need to make sure that you're locking your elbows, because what that'll do is it'll help us not do the Grey's Anatomy style chest compressions that we're so familiar with,
You're
right?
telling me that those are not real?
I hate to break it to you, but those are movie chest
Man,
compressions. Yes.
I cannot believe that.
Yeah, they're not going to be quite as effective. So we want to keep the elbows locked.
Okay.
And then we want to, and this will be easier when they're on the floor, but we want to try and get directly over them, like we're leaning directly over them. So much so to where if we moved our hands out of the way, we would fall chest to chest with them.
Okay.
Right? Directly over them. And then with everything in place, we bend at our waist, and we're just going to let our upper body weight help us do the chest compressions, because we're trying to move it a good distance, right? So we're going to let our body weight just help us accomplish that. So it's a full body up and down.
Now you're touching bones in there. You're not.
Yes.
Can you break them?
So that is a common thing that gets talked about with CPR, breaking ribs. Now, you aren't technically breaking any ribs. So you're not breaking ribs like you would think of breaking an arm, right? You're not fracturing them like way out here. What you will do is you'll cause the sternum to separate from the ribs. And those are joints like any other joint in the body. So it's more like dislocating the sternum. Now, why people say it's breaking ribs is because it's something you hear and it is something you feel when you're the one initiating the CPR.
Oh, wow.
Right? So it's something to be aware of, but like I said, it's not causing them significant harm if you're doing that.
And if they're not breathing, that's probably it's better to have that than not to breathe.
Exactly. Okay. And the healing process for that anyways is literally just time. They're not going to do anything to actively treat it.
Right.
They just work their way back and then they're fine after a while, right?
How hard do you go?
So it takes a pretty significant amount of force because we're aiming to move their chest 2 to 2.4 inches.
Oh,
and that's a pretty good distance, right? So you're really leaning your body weight into them. And so I always just say literally just push as hard as you can, because that'll get you to those 2 to 2.4 inches.
So, okay. So now I'm going to ask the stupid questions because I know I'm going to sound a little bit stupid, but oh well. So basically what you're trying to do is pump the heart.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're like pushing so that pretty much what Grey's Anatomy says, like do it with your hands, and then they open, like start doing that to the. So that's what you're trying to do when you're doing that, is pumping the heart.
Correct.
So that the blood,
and that's keeping all that blood and oxygen
still
and
going.
everything moving.
Okay. Yeah. Now, is there a specific pace?
There is a specific pace we're aiming for, and it's 100 to 120 beats per minute. That's where they teach that song, Staying Alive, right? You can sing that while you're going. Get you to at least 100 beats per minute.
It's Staying Alive. I need to hear that song because I don't know which one is it, but okay.
Yeah. And there's multiple songs. Another song that fits in that category that most people know, Baby Shark. That actually works too.
Really?
Yes, it fits into that 100 to 120 beats per minute. And it gets you there. And there's actually a lot of songs that fit into that, but those are just like the ones that people tend to know. Now, something I always like to teach too, and this is more my class specifically than all classes, but I always like to mention the fact that those numbers exist, right? We have the 100 to 120 beats per minute, as well as the 2 to 2.4 inches of depth. And those numbers are obviously good to know because there's research behind those numbers. They exist for a reason, right? But I always like to try and remind people of the fact that, again, this is a very stressful situation, right? Especially if this is a family member or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And our brain stops working as good in situations like that,
right? Because you're under stress, so yeah.
So it makes it a little bit harder to recall those numbers. So something I always say to make it as easy as possible to remember is, instead of trying to remember all those numbers or any songs or anything like that, if you just keep repeating to yourself to push hard and push fast, that gets you into an effective range. And what I mean by that is, when you're there, you're literally just repeating, push hard, push fast, push hard, push fast, push hard, push fast. As fast as you can say it, do your compressions, and it gets you into that effective range for both the speed and the depth. And it's just easier to remember than a bunch of numbers, right?
Or the song. I mean, I'm telling you, if I have to give you CPR and I have to remember a song, forget it. I'll make sure that I'll go to your funeral, because it will be my fault. Literally.
That's why I like to point out that, because you're literally just repeating what you know you're supposed to be doing, which is push hard and push fast.
Okay. Right? Now, how long?
So if we're doing the hands-only CPR,
because if
we're going to keep going.
Again, if you're with me, I might be like, okay, let me call it. I watch Grey's Anatomy so much. I'm sorry. This is not fun stuff. This is serious stuff. I'm just saying. But okay, so how long do you do it
So
for?
if we're doing the hands-only CPR, which will be most of the situations, right? If what we're doing is the hands-only CPR, how they teach it is we're actually going to do it without stopping until the help gets there, or that AED, someone finally brings that, right?
Oh,
Otherwise,
wow.
we're not stopping. Now, if you do have the luxury of having other people with you that are trained and can do chest compressions as well,
switch or whatever.
Switch when you start getting tired, because we really want to keep those chest compressions as effective as possible. So, hitting the numbers that we're supposed to aim for.
Right.
So if you start slowing down or getting too shallow, then we should be switching off if you have other people with you. If it's you by yourself, you're just going to have to keep going and try and basically muscle through it until the help gets there. Really.
How long does it usually take for a firefighter to show up?
So in Corpus, I can speak on us. Here in the city, it usually takes our department around 5 minutes to get there for someone to get there. So not very long.
Not that long.
In most circumstances, it'll be about 5 minutes. If not the ambulance, at least a fire truck, but they're all just as trained as everybody else, so they'll be able to take over when they get there.
Now, what about, okay, so this is the misconception that, I think years and years go by, and then we kept thinking, heart issues or heart attacks, like older people, like the old man or whatever, without thinking that, it is something that happens, to young people, to kids, to, girls, women, and all of the above. So
anytime
at anywhere, right?
Yeah, you never know.
So what is the difference, say, for kids?
So with kids, in general, there's really not that much difference, especially in terms of the hands-only CPR. They're not breathing and all that. We're still going to be doing it. Now, still want the hard, flat surface. The difference with the chest compressions is they say we can use one hand on a kid. And that's just because their chest is smaller and less developed.
Right.
So it doesn't take us as much effort to push their chest an appropriate amount. So we can get away with the one hand.
With
right?
one.
Now, the depth is also going to change for kids.
Okay.
Because, again, they're smaller, right? So they also don't give us an exact measurement for kids. And that's because they come in a wide variety of sizes.
Right.
1 inch on a 1-year-old is very different from 1 inch on a 3-year-old.
Right.
So instead of an exact measurement, they tell us to aim for a third the depth of the chest. Now, what does that mean? Basically means if you're looking at them from the side, you're going to, from the top of their chest to their back, you're splitting it into thirds, and you want to move it that first third of the way.
Do you want to go through it?
That's what that means. And again, I always like to point out, pretty hard to tell in the moment, right? So if you can keep repeating to yourself to push hard and push fast, it gets you into an effective range.
You're in a good time spot. What about pregnant women?
So it doesn't change at all on pregnant women.
Same.
We treat the chest compressions exactly the same way. The only added thought to it is you're not only helping mom, you're helping baby, right? There's two lives there now. So we definitely want to be giving our best effort in that case if we can, and get help there as fast as we can.
To do it, right. And then babies, because I have seen those like with just the finger. Or is that
That's
not
correct.
a thing?
No,
That's
that
just
is a thing,
Grey's Anatomy
For
thing.
babies, again, it's because of how small they are compared to the other age groups. One hand covers way too much of their chest.
Right.
So they show the 2 fingers. And it's really front 2, middle 2. Honestly, whichever's most comfortable for you doesn't matter really.
Just go like that.
But 2 fingers, same thing. Center of the sternum between the nipple line. And we're, just like with kids, aiming for that third, the depth of the chest. And it's the same speed, 100 to 120 beats per minute. That doesn't change for any of the
any
age groups.
size or any
That's exactly
age.
the same across the board.
Okay.
It's just that depth that kind of changes.
So this is very interesting. Actually, I'm gonna go and take Alexa, my daughter, to go and take. We need to go and take the class. So you said it's $50
for the healthcare card.
For the non-healthcare
it's
card.
$35.
And it's $35 for just a regular person.
For a regular CPR non-healthcare.
How many people do you have in the class?
It ranges widely. I've done as small as like 5 people. I've done as big as like 30. It just depends on the day. Usually weekends are a little bit busier because that's when most people are free.
Wanna do it?
But we pretty much have a class every day. I'm not on shift because I'm the primary instructor. So like tomorrow I'm on shift, so no tomorrow, but the 2 days after that, there'll be classes. And we actually have a website you can go to that pulls up the calendar that shows all of our upcoming class days for people to sign up on. You
need to give us that link so that we can put it when we put the podcast up. We can put that link. And then this is what I'm going to do. So for the month of February, I'm going to donate 10 classes.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I'm going to donate the 10 classes. You guys don't have to pay him. I'm going to pay him, but you guys are going to have to give the $35 to the American Heart Association. So there's a hitch? No. There's the word just went. A pitch? A sales pitch to it. Yeah. There's that. You're going to still learn CPR on me. 10 people will get with you. I'll see who wants to sign up. I think it's very important. I really do think that it's very important. It's like that guy on the NFL player.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I feel like if they would have not had done the CPR there on the ground, right?
Yeah, and that's a big thing with it. The earlier we do it, the better chance we're creating for this person.
To survive.
Okay,
yeah. So very important. What number, is there a number that they can call if they want an actual information that you want to give them?
Yes. They can call our main office at the National First Responder Training Complex. That number is 361-299-5200. So 361-299-5200.
299-5200. Call if you guys have any questions or you want to schedule that. Like I said, I'm going to donate 10 classes. All you have to do is donate to the American Heart Association, and they'll have your name down there, and you can go and take the class. I know for a fact, Home Source Mortgage, we're gonna go and do that. I mean, that's gonna be my outing, my office outing. We always do fun stuff with that. I really appreciate you coming and making sure and explaining us all how it works, and I think I feel better with I have issues with that whole. I always had issues with the whole mouth to mouth. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. So these actually,
that's a general consensus.
Yeah, I can do that. So if you guys have any questions, check the calendar. I think this is very important for us to know and not to forget. So tell them 3 things that they should do to be healthy, heart health.
Obviously, trying to maintain some kind of exercise is good, and it doesn't necessarily have to be heavy lifting weights or anything like that. Getting up and walking 30 minutes to an hour a day is enough to, get your heart pumping, get your blood moving. Improving our diets is another big one. Try and eat less greasy and fatty foods because that just clogs up all the pipes, right? And then drinking plenty of fluids. You want to make sure you're always hydrated. He does not
mean alcohol.
No,
he means actually water. So
water is what we want.
Because if you said that, then they're gonna quote you. Well, Ryan said to you to drink a lot of.
They teach us in school our body's 70% water, 70% alcohol. So we want water.
There you go. You got it there. Walk, eat well, and drink a lot of water, not alcohol. Thank you so much, Ryan, again for being here. Bye, guys.